What's up, gamers and nerds? It's John of Video Games in the World with weekly news number 21. As you can all see, springtime has finally arrived and it's getting warmer. Thank God. As someone who grew up in the Dominican Republic from the age of 7 to 19 years of age, I am more into the warm weather than the cold. Anyways, we got a lot of news about gaming, movies, and TV shows. And we're going to have a rant about something today and also talk about the recent episode of Invincible Season 4, and warning, there will be spoilers for that episode. Let us begin this weekly news, shall we? Do you remember when the PlayStation Network had TV shows? If you did, then I am sure you remember the comic book adaptation of the superhero crime series, Powers. Powers served as the PlayStation Network's first venture into scripted original programming, and it was based on the Image Marvel comic book series of the same name by Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Avon Oeming. The series premiered on March 10, 2015 and ran for 2 seasons before it was cancelled on August 2016. Still, it wasn't as good as many people thought. Powers is a gritty police procedural set in a world where superheroes exist and often act as flawed celebrities. The story focuses on 2 homicide detectives, Christian Walker and Dina Pilgrim, who investigate crimes involving superpowered individuals. When it comes to adult animation involving comic book adaptations, on Amazon Prime we got Invincible, but it turns out that Netflix is going to adapt Powers as an adult animated series. Netflix is developing an adult animated series adaptation of the long-running comic with Dark Horse Entertainment's Keith Goldberg and Chris Tung executive producing. The 2 creators are involved in the development. Bendis is said to be writing the pilot while Oeming is participating in the visual development for the show. I remember watching the show on the PlayStation Network, and to be honest, it was pretty good. The reason why the show was cancelled was due to low viewership, limited reach of exclusive PlayStation platform, and high cost of production. Now that Netflix is going to make an adult animated adaptation, the question is, will it succeed or fail? We'll find out. The Star Wars sequel trilogy first premiered 10 years and 3 months ago, starting with Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. This trilogy is known to be very divisive, as some people loved it, others hated it, and some remain in the middle up until this day. Some people who hated it decided to give it another chance and change their feelings about it. Others remain the same, either hating it or in the middle. So, what's the story about the sequel trilogy? The puppeteer for BB-8 said that in a decade's time, the sequel trilogy will become as beloved as the prequels were. In an interview with Game Reactor, BB-8 operator Brian Herring compared the current mood around Disney's Star Wars sequels to the initial response for George Lucas' prequels, which were widely despised by veteran fans back in the 2000s. Over time, fan opinion towards the prequels has softened somewhat, as the young fans who grew up with Darth Maul and Jar Jar now look back on The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith with some nostalgia. Herring also said the following: I think the sequels are no more polarizing than the prequels were when they came out. All the people who are upset about the sequels are too young to remember how upset the people when the prequels came out were, except they now have the internet. If the internet had been around to the extent it's around now, when the prequels came out, you have seen exactly the same stuff play out. And I think in 10 years' time, you're going to see the same with the sequels, because the sequels have a huge fan base and I meet them all the time, but they're all much younger than the people complaining on the internet. It's perfectly fine, Harry concluded. If you don't like them, you don't like them. Everything's not for everyone. And I just think that these things are all generational, and I think Battlestar Galactica said it best. This has all happened before, it will all happen again. And I agree with Herring, because had social media existed back then during the time of the prequels, it would have been a massacre, especially with this culture war still ongoing. The prequels were indeed polarizing since they felt mostly for younger audiences due to their lighthearted characters like Jar Jar Binks and their humorous moments too. I remember watching episode 1 back in 1999 when I was 13 and I walked away happy from the movie theater. However, some people were not too happy, like some fans of the original trilogy were, for example. Many years later, I heard things that got me very angry, such as all these angry gatekeeping false fans sending death threats to Ahmed Best, George Lucas, Hayden Christensen, bullying Jake Lloyd in school, etc. It's no wonder why George Lucas said, "Why do I even bother?" when he was making his own sequel trilogy and had to cancel it. Now, do I think that the sequel trilogy will be as loved as the prequels over time? They could or could not. Only time will tell. Some of us walked away happy after The Force Awakens, but when The Last Jedi premiered, we all know how that went when walking out of the movie theater. The Rise of Skywalker then premiered. Barely anyone was happy. To be honest, social media outrage is one of the main reasons why media literacy is dying. Back then, people thought that it was creative of writers and directors to subvert and defy expectations of those who would see the movie. Nowadays, with all the social media outrage mobs and the culture war, when people are so accustomed to getting what they want in the field of entertainment, their views and beliefs getting challenged seem like an attack on them. The collective outrage is what the Filipinos would call crab mentality. Crab mentality is a term first coined by Filipino journalist and feminist activist Ninochka Rosca. It is to describe a collective mentality that goes like, if I cannot have this, then no one will. It is also known as a bucket mentality, in which when a crab tries to get out of the bucket or the barrel, its own kind will try to drag it back inside to drown in the group's collective misery. And finally, this sequel trilogy is not for everyone like the prequels were. If you like it, okay then. If you don't like it, okay then. To each their own. Cada uno con lo suyo. And I always say this regarding of whether you loved or hated the sequel trilogy is this. Don't be an asshole like the ones who sent death threats to John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, Kathleen Kennedy, Kelly Marie Tran, Ryan Johnson, and J.J. Abrams. Don't be an asshole to the ones who called, like the ones who called Diego Luna and Moses Ingram diversity hires. Don't be an asshole like the ones who called the lovers of the sequel trilogy Disney shills. That's all. Antony Starr is a New Zealand actor known for the TV show Banshee, and even more famously known as a villainous superhero, Homelander, in Amazon Prime's original series, The Boys. It turns out that Antony Starr is often suggested to play as Albert Wesker in the live-action adaptation of Resident Evil. To be honest, I really love this idea of Starr playing as the evil Wesker, but it turns out that he thinks at age 50 he's too old to play the villain, and that the only reason people think he should play Wesker in the first place is because of Homelander's blonde hair. So people keep bringing this up, he said. The only thing I have in common with that is blonde hair, which I've gotten rid of, as you can see. I think you probably need someone younger. I'm 50. To be honest, I would say that age isn't only a number, and what matters is how you live. Hell, even Jensen Ackles insisted that Starr was perfect for the role, adding, "That would be amazing. I would watch it." It's too bad that the upcoming Resident Evil movie will not feature characters from the games. And if in the future Starr decides to play as Wesker, I would totally see him as the iconic villain. When it comes to handheld consoles, you think of the Game Boy, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo 3DS, the DS, PS Vita, PSP, and so on. But right now, the Game Boy Advanced has been crowned the best handheld console of all time. In second place, the Nintendo DS, and in third place is the PSP. When I was 15 years old, I wanted a Game Boy Advance, and my parents were like, "Forget it, son. That thing is going to cost an arm and a leg, you know." But thankfully, with the help of a few friends in school, I learned about emulators in which I remember downloading the Visual Boy Advance emulator and got to play some of the best games on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance is like a Super NES version of the Game Boy. My favorite GBA games are Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, Golden Sun, Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, Mega Man Zero series, Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap, and so many more. Now, when it comes to the two handhelds in second and third place, I like the Nintendo DS since it had backwards compatibility and a lot of amazing games like Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. Now, while I love the Game Boy Advance, I love the PSP a lot more since you could download movies, TV shows, put music on a memory stick, and it had a lot of amazing video games like Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories, Vice City Stories, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, Final Fantasy Tactics, War of the Lions, Lumines, Killzone Liberation, The City of Final Fantasy, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, God of War Chains of Olympus, God of War, Ghost of Sparta, and so many more. While many crown the Game Boy Advance the best handheld console, my top three are the following. The PSP in first place, second place, Game Boy Advance, third place, the Nintendo DS. Now, I want to talk about the recent episode of Invincible, Herm. This episode premiered just this Wednesday, and it is an original story for this animated show by Robert Kirkman. In this episode, Damien Darkblood, who is based on Hellboy, and Rorschach from Watchmen request the help of Invincible to help Satan regain his throne from Volcanica. As I was watching this episode and realized who Invincible and Damien Darkblood had to help, I was like, wow, the Christians are going to have a field day with this episode. Now, in Invincible, Hell is called the Underrealm, and it is located beneath Earth. This version of Hell in the show is not connected to the one often talked about in the Holy Bible. The demons in this episode keep creatures called the Vile from escaping to the surface world and destroying it, which is Earth, of course. Now, the way Satan was designed in the show was not exactly how I expected, but still it was well animated. I did say that Christians were going to have a field day with this episode, but hey, at least Mark didn't kneel before Satan. I wouldn't either. My thoughts about that episode are that I must say that it was okay in its own way, and some things I didn't like, such as the fight against Cerberus. They could have done so much better than that. Bruce Campbell did an amazing job voicing Satan. He really gave it his all into being the devil himself. Indira Varma did an excellent job as Volcanica, and it was hilarious how Invincible kept punching her head off over and over, I must say. Anyway, one of my favorite parts in that episode is where Damien and Invincible talk about how humans use hell as a story to keep people good. When I saw that scene, it kind of reminded me of our world when people use a story of hell to keep people good. It also reminded me of the time when I was a kid living in Santo Domingo. Back then, people used to tell children, if you're bad, God will punish you. Si te portas mal, Dios te va a castigar. And as I mature, I have realized that God does not punish because everyone is responsible for their own destruction. As said in the Bible, you reap what you sow. In the end, no one is all good and all evil. It all depends on how you live in this world and how your actions can either be harmful or beneficial. However, some people tend to use hell by being prejudiced, telling people that if they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, or any other religion, that they're going to hell for such things. They also say the same to atheists. If they don't believe in God, they will go to hell. And atheists don't believe in higher powers or the afterlife. But in the end, who knows if they truly get to see it? Who knows, right? in my honest opinion, as a non-denominational myself, do you really think that if someone is gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, they're going to hell when they die? No. Do you really think that just because they're a different faith from Christianity, they will go to hell? No. Do you think that having sex before getting married will lead you to hell? No. Those things are human. In the end, when it's our time to go, we might be very surprised to see who is in heaven, yet sad to see who goes to hell. Christopher Hitchens viewed the concept of hell as a cruel, totalitarian, and immoral doctrine used by religions to terrify children and enforce dogma. And he was right, because throughout history, men in power will use their religion to instill fear of going to hell on the masses for not being religious enough, or just because they had sex before getting married, or because they identify as something as not male or female, or because they lean towards the same sex. Also, I remember as a kid that a bunch of fanatical Christians saying crap like, if you watch anime like Dragon Ball Z, Saint Seiya, or play Dungeons and Dragons, you are engaging in devilish acts. I always ignored these people due to their fanatism. So, I did like that scene between Mark and Damon as it made me reminisce and even think as well. The fight scenes were okay except that of Severus. The story could have been a bit better. So my score for that episode is a 6 out of 10. And now for the main event, which is going to be both a defense and a rant. This is going to get me a lot of heat for what I'm about to say regarding the actor of Severus Snape in the upcoming Harry Potter TV series on HBO. It turns out that the studio filming the show has gotten heavy security because of the racist death threats against Papa Isidore, who is portraying Severus Snape, who was played by the late Alan Rickman in the original Harry Potter movies. I gotta say, those are some pretty big shoes to fill. Isidore has opened up about the racist abuse he has received from those who believe a black man should not be playing the fictional wizard. In an interview with The Time of London, he said the following: "I've been told, quit or I'll murder you. The reality is that if I look at Instagram, I will see somebody saying, I'm going to come to your house and kill you. Nobody should have to encounter this for doing their job, and I'd be lying if I said it doesn't affect me emotionally." Now, usually I would disagree with race and gender swapping originally established characters, since most times it feels forced and tokenized. And before you all start jumping the gun, I will not deny that some of these swaps actually worked in the past. Why? Because they stayed true to the character. And let me tell you one thing. Sending racist death threats is a line I would not dare to cross. Because that is being a petty, deplorable, disgusting, and racist piece of fucking shit. To Isidore, I am truly sorry for what you had to endure. As someone who saw the movies in my mid to late teens and read the books in my 20s, I am truly sorry that these gatekeeping fucks had to do this to you. They're bitching and hurling racial slurs because they're fucking pathetic. These racist trolls are so safe in front of their computers that they forgot what it's like to get punched in the face for being disrespectful. I'm never surprised that in cases like these, they would say that the stuff that they liked since childhood has gone woke. The likes of Melanie Mack, Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, Anna That Star Wars Girl, Ryan Kinnell, and those like them would unsurprisingly stoop this low, calling this change woke, and resort to pettiness and racism. This isn't the first time that the Harry Potter series has been attacked by gatekeepers. 10 years ago, there was a similar outcry when a black woman was cast to play as Hermione Granger in the original London production of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Racist vitriol has also been hurled toward actors in other genre franchises, including fantasy shows such as House of the Dragon and The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, as well as those involved in Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm glad that ECW is not letting those bastards grind him down. Let them cry whatever the fuck they want, because in the end, they lose. Behind all this bravado they have in front of their computers, outside of it, they're just scared little shitheads. At the same time, some people don't want to watch Harry Potter not because of ECW playing Snape, but also because of all the transphobic shit that J.K. Rowling said. I support the trans community, and I will not tell people to not watch the show. It's a choice that they have to make themselves. Me, personally, I feel more connected to the movies and books than the show, but I'll wait to see if it's good or bad. To all these actors in that show, I wish you all the best of luck. And that is all I have to say. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and follow me on Patreon and Discord. This is John of Video Games in the World, signing off. Bye.